minority groups. They suffer from discrimination, they suffer from abuse, and now they say they want to be treated just like anybody else. So to talk about this national survey on transsexuals, please welcome authors Adi Griffin and Roberta Perkins, and transsexuals Christy McNicol and Gina Burns. Welcome. Now, Roberta, the report would be the first in Australia to seek out the views seriously of transsexuals. First of all, for a lot of people who don't understand, define as simply as you can the difference between a transsexual and a transvestite.
Well, very, very briefly, people who are labelled transsexual are usually people who change their gender and intend to do permanently. They go from male to female or female to male, and that is a permanent step. People who
even without the operation.
Oh yes, the operation. Not all for whole lots of reasons. Not all transsexuals have operations. Some can't afford it, of course. Those who are labelled transvestite usually refer to those who will cross-dress, just put on the clothing and accoutrements of the opposite sex without necessarily going any further. And it's very much a temporary thing.
Now, Christy, when did you decide to cross the line?
I always knew from when I was small, like most transsexuals, but when I was 16, I changed.
Is it a case of you thinking to yourself, even in your teenage years and growing up, think, I'm different, I really feel like I have a woman's mind trapped in a man's body?
Basically, yeah. I always felt like that. When I got to the right age, I did something about it. Yeah.
Gina, you also changed, but you... How do your family cope with this when you decided that you really should live your life as a woman?
Originally, way back when, not very well, because 25 years ago in Western Australia it was very taboo. Socially it wasn't acceptable, it wasn't even a talked about thing. Not much knowledge was available to myself or my family in regards to how we would go about this.
They'd say you're a freak, wouldn't they, back then?
Yeah, basically. And the only line we had was medical intervention through the course of psychiatry. And that explained it to them and myself, but that was basically it, just the psychiatry and what that involved.
When you talk about being treated better by society, what are the sort of things where you're discriminated against?
Well, the discrimination against trannies is total. It happens in every aspect of Australian life, and it's practiced by every sector of Australian life. It's in employment, it's in education, it's in welfare services, it's in housing, it's in dealing with government departments. It's institutionalised in the law. There is no legal recognition of our status in Australian law.
Yeah, I mean, there are some laws, I'll grant, which are totally antiquated, because I think still in Tasmania, if Barry Humphries turned up after dark dressed as Dame Edna, it's true, he's breaking the law.
It's very true. Yes. Yeah.
And that's the absurdity of the legal situation that we have to deal with, that there is just nothing in the law that allows us recognition as people.
When you go through some of these here, some of the figures, these statistics that you say you found by talking to other transsexuals, that up to 40% have thought about or tried to commit suicide, that a lot of them take drugs. That seems to say to me that a lot of you are not happy with your lives, not happy with the choice you've made.
Yeah, I think it's the way society treats a lot of trannies I mean, it's a very complex process, but at the end of a series of harassment, family rejections, everyday discrimination, you get a lot of trannies that end up. Some seem to cope very well, but others do not, so they resort to drugs or they attempt suicide and things like that.
I'd like to say that I'm very happy with the choices that I made and that I don't have any problem living with me. I like me, but I do experience an awful lot of problems when I open the front door and go out into society.
Do you find, I mean, Australia had an awful reputation for what was crudely called poofta bashing. Do you find that you run the risk of being physically abused as well as verbally abused, Gina?
Yes, there has been times in the past where there has been, incidences when out in public, somebody will zoom in on you for no fault of your own. They see you, they zoom in and they give you grief. And sometimes you can't always get away from it. And it's a bit confronting to the public as well, because it brings up a lot of questions in their own mind about, well, probably their own sexuality.
Do you believe that? I mean, if a heterosexual male or a heterosexual female sees you in the street, that doesn't flash into my mind saying, gee, maybe I'm not straight. It really doesn't. I mean, to each your own, but I don't find that.
It's not only heterosexuals either. We found in our study that 40% of the trannies who responded to our questions found that gays were discriminating against them in various sectors of the life that they...
What about work discrimination? Christy, I mean, how do you work? Where do you work?
Well, my line of work, I'm an entertainer, so I've never had any problem, and I've found it to my advantage, being the way I am, getting more work. It hasn't been a problem at all.
What about you, Gina, in terms of working?
I'm in the welfare industry at the moment, and I've found that it's been very supportive of me and non-judgmental, but in the past, I have gone for job interviews, and it basically boils down to, you know, and sometimes they have asked me quite blatantly, which toilet are you going to use?
Well, I suppose it's a fairly fair question for a would-be employer.
Yeah, but it makes you wonder where they're coming from. You think, well, hang on, how can my work performance or my ability to do something be judged on
an appendage?
Yeah, that's it.
But I think of the other people in that office who may not be as tolerant, and they say, if they say, well, hold on, this person says he is a woman or lives as a woman, but still has all the male equipment, I don't want them in the ladies' toilet. I mean, I could see that coming up, can't you?
But how would they know you've got? How would they know what sort of equipment you've got anyway? Are we assuming that they already conceive the need for clothing?
Right.
Don't people actually find it funny that the final line in the battle of the sexes is somewhere in the public plumbing system?
I wonder, do you ever accept that biologically, if you and neither of you have had the operation, have you?
No.
I only ask it for this reason. Do you ever accept that biologically you are still classified as male?
We are classified, I still think, as male, as it stands at this point. But I think that's based on more of a sexual thing. You know, like if there's surgical intervention and you're post-operative, well, that legitimises the fact that you have taken the correct steps within society to become what you portray.
Why wouldn't you, either of you, have it done? If you've taken this step to this distance, why wouldn't you have the operation? Is it financial or is it moral?
I'm quite comfortable with who I am, how I've evolved over the last 25 years. You know, it's a very personal thing. Like, it wouldn't necessarily suit me to take that step where others it would. But it's just a self-acceptance thing that I found.
Do any of you ever either regret the step you've made, because I doubt that because of the way you think, but do you ever at all think as a male?
Well, what does thinking as a male mean?
Well, I think I'm in some deep trouble here, aren't I?
I went to a football match last weekend with my boys.
No, okay.
What does that mean?
But do you ever, once you've crossed this line, do you ever want to go back to dressing like a man or putting on a suit, or this is now total commitment?
Not at all. From when I changed, that was like I was happy from then on. Before that, when I was a boy, I was just depressed, sad all the time. So,
I think it's the same with all of us too, you know, and that's why a lot do attempt suicide, because they can't get the change they need, or people keep obstructing their need to change their gender, or they don't know how to go about it, or something like that.
I think it's important as well that we do get away from this thing of, you know, people being biologically male or biologically female.
But that is a fact, isn't it?
What we do is look at the way that people live, which is also a fact, and it's probably a much more relevant fact to most people. It's the way that people actually live. We say that's important.
It's quite seriously. Do you think then birth certificate should be left blank until you make up your mind?
No, but there should be the option to change it. I mean, when you go to a lot of trouble to change your gender and express yourself in that particular way, and obviously that's your identity, then the law should support you. I mean, it's supposed to be a country that claims to be very proud of its human rights records, and then it's about time it caught up with the facts. And here is a fact here. There are a number of people that need a change.
Well, the facts are there. It is an interesting read, and I just hope that what you hope to get out of it, I presume, by your coming on here today, is just get a bit more understanding, because you are people, and this is the course of life you have chosen.
I think what comes out of that report is that there is systematic violation of our human rights going on in Australian society, and we're crying out for anti-discrimination legislation and legal recognition of the right to change gender.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for your time. Would you please thank our guests, Adi Griffin, Roberta Perkins, Christy McNicol and Gina Burns.